devil's left hand. The devil's left hand. Sinistra and dextra. I had a brother that's left-handed. I have a cousin that's left-handed. There's left-handedness in our family, and I work both ways. If I need to use my left hand for something, I learn to use it. Everybody thinks they're dominant right-left. It's how you learn it that makes you better with that hand. What there is a dominance, there's a thing. I'm right-handed, but I throw a frisbee left. My brother, the one that loves me, the one that I love, he's left-handed. And you watch him working on a roof because they taught him, they were told, left-handed is no good. So, as I said, sinistra, left hand, dextra, dexterity, right hand. Sinistra means the hand of the devil. Yeah, why is that? So they're like, ooh, old Catholic Polacks, you gotta fuck 'em, make 'em right-handed. Who were the Polacks fighting in the past that they knew that the devil's left hand, the devil's left hand? And so you work with him on a roof, putting on a roof, and he's got a hammer. He's going bop, 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 right-handed. And he switches without pause. Bop, bop, bop. That fucker can work all day long hammering a nail. He's good with right and left because they forced him to learn right. They made him feel stupid for being left. They forced him to learn that, so now he's good at both. And so it makes me think about these things. How on a train going through China once, there were these two French women, and they had a Down syndrome young adult with them. And I looked at him, and I said, oh, I've seen Down syndrome people before. And I'm like, even in other cultures, they have that look. And then I had a bum come up to me in Zhengzhou, China, with this Down syndrome kid, a Chinese Down syndrome, and he's just standing there. And the guy's talking, whoa, and grabbing him, and say, get off of me. And I look at the damn kid, I'm like, he looks just like any other Down syndrome. And I started talking to him in Chinese, and he was like, oh, and the bum was like, yeah, push me off. Didn't want me to talk to the kid because that is a human. It's a different species is what I came to understand. It's not just Homo sapiens. Sapiens are humans. Neanderthals aren't. We're all humans if we can hold together this idea of humanity. We're just different species of it. They keep trying to go races between people. But no, all of those races that they're attacking, they are of our species, whereas I've come to believe that a Down syndrome child is not. And I'm going to tell you why in a minute. It's interesting. I went to work with the mentally handicapped at the crossroads, and having seen these exhibits of Down syndrome children in different cultures, which I had finally come to believe this is a mixture of the Neanderthal and the Homo sapiens sapiens bloodline. I believe this is a hybrid that can still breed, not a true hybrid. We're close enough that we could breed and still reproduce afterwards. Whereas if you take a cat and a bobcat and they breed, they can have a baby. But the baby that's born is sterile. It cannot reproduce. And so I'm looking, I'm like, these are people that are close enough to us, but they are of a different species. And I'm working in Crossroads, and I noticed all the Down syndrome kids, when they're coloring their paper and they can hold conversations with us as adults and do better than I was. They were paying their bills. They had a house of their own. They're doing just fine. They're just a different level of intellect, a different range. But they were left-handed. I noticed this, and I'd never heard of this in any of my teachings, any of my coursework, any of this stuff about psychology, about how Down syndrome are left-handed. But I caught it, and I said to somebody, you notice? And they're like, no, I didn't. And so it was something that I caught on to. I'm sure it's written out there somewhere. I haven't seen it. Haven't looked it up. It's just stuff I find interesting. And then there was a place that I worked where there was this guy, and he had the whole, I've run into it more than once. They've got a Down syndrome look, but they're doing just fine. And they're happy and loving, and you can tell they want to hug you. I mean, it's like, it's not proper in the workplace. The one place I'm working, he had a big tongue, and he had the big shoulders. You know, they're strong. I've had to wrestle them. They're just not smart enough to win in a smart person's fight. I watched him, and I watched him, and I watched him. I said, this guy has got Down syndrome. He's got enough of the Neanderthal blood in him. He's got enough of it. And I watched, and I waited, and I waited, and I watched him, and one day I finally saw him write something down, and there he went. Left-handed. Left-handed. I said, wow. All these people, we talk about the past, it's still with us. They're left-handed. The devil's left hand. And it makes me wonder whether all these old Polish Catholics who have been, making their left-handed children learn to be right-handed, if it doesn't come back from man-eaters or whatever that Michael Crichton book was, 13th Warrior, they made the movie out of it, where there were all the old people were coming up and attacking the new people, and it may be that was one of our first forms of racism, was what we learned from the old people. They hated us, and we were afraid of them, and so if somebody showed up being left-handed, we wanted to hide it. You can't let the priest know that you've raised a child with the devil's left hand.